Okay, I think it's working now. Let's see. Hi, everyone. This is 1086 days. 1086 days, and I hope that I got all this right. Make sure I'm on. There I am. It's working. Okay, I had to go off and on again real quick. Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Okay. Very good. Okay, everything is working. I believe everything is working. Okay. Hi, everyone. Saturday night here. Saturday night was a very interesting day. We went to the movies. We saw The Sound of Freedom. And yeah, I'm going to give you my take on that. But I think even more interesting, should I say more interesting? Because we all know that there is child sex trafficking. Okay, this movie, it's been waiting 5 years um, to get into the theaters. It was blocked for 5 years. They made it 8 years ago. Started 8 years ago, I believe, and just sabotage and blocked and very, very similar to what happened to Richard when he made his complaints. But we have 85,000 minors unaccounted for from the Fort Bliss Emergency Intake Center before it was shut down last month. And there is a problem. There is a pedophile problem. There is a child sex trafficking problem. There's a porn problem, and all porn is child sex trafficking. And why am I talking about this? Because Richard's case all started with him not wanting to participate in the child sex trafficking, child pornography, child sex abuse, Vanity Fair, that the sex cults that go on right there on Fort Bliss and in the military, to be honest with you, but really at Fort Bliss, of course, because the sister Siamese city with Juarez, Mexico. And, there is this shocking connection with so many in Richard's case that that has to do with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with the Mormons. And, you know, this is Romney area, okay? Um, Senator Romney's father was born in Mexico, in Colonial Juarez. He's one of the founders of that area. Um, and, and going upwards into El Paso and on the other side of the border of New Mexico. So Texas, New Mexico border, that area, and going all the way up to Utah. This is uh, shocking. We have the Farnsworth's name involved in Richard's case as a huge lead. And of this truck, that the truck is, I haven't mentioned it in a while, is this color. And there was a driver for that truck that has interesting connections. Um, and it had shaved handles, which means that, you have to know how to get in and out in order to get in and out because it doesn't have handles. And so it's custom made truck. That's still in the play of all of this. Okay. Just because I haven't mentioned it in a while. Um, this case, our son's case, is so convoluted because it involves so much collusion, so much, so many allegations of mishandling of this case because of collusion, because of participation, of when it comes to pedophilia, child sex trafficking, those are still illegal, you see. And that's why there's a problem with it. Oh my God, there always should be a problem with it. But it's going on. It's going on as a huge, huge business. And I think that the biggest point that I got from the movie Sound of Freedom is that parents that want opportunities for their children are taken advantage of. And that's how the military recruiters, I'm liking them to what happened in this movie. And I know that, people are going to yell at me for this, but this is what came to my mind because I know that this beauty pageant lady in the movie, this spoiler alert, that was very, very trusted because she was a known beauty pageant winner. Um, and, the parents trust her with their children to get a future for their children. And this is how recruiters are. Um, and I've heard this over and over and over again from parents that the recruiters promise all these things, and the number one thing they promise is that we will care for your child. Okay? Now, yes, the children are 17, they're young adults. They're young adults, but for the families, these are their children. It doesn't matter how old, you can be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and to your parent, you're still their child. And so the recruiters know that. And I know from several, lots of them, families that I've talked to, this is the ongoing conversation, is how they thought that their child was going to have a future in the military and that they were going to be cared for, and yet they were raped, yet they were maligned, yet they were um, trained to suicide. They were um, so messed with that they ended up with PTSD, on drugs, alcoholics, not the same person. Always, I've gotten that back. They're not the same person. They're not the same person. They're not the same person in a very, very negative sense, negative way. Uh, that mentally harmed. And I just, that's what I was thinking of, is how, these young adults, these young 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, they are told that they're going to get this training and this mentoring and that they're going to be cared for and that they're going to get enlistment bonus and, you know, but they don't tell them that they have sex cults that are going to groom them, that they are going to be raped, a very large potential of being raped. I don't care if you're a man or a female. It is more dangerous if you're a female, that the barracks are co-ed. I don't know if they tell them that. Whose bright idea was that anyway? I mean, that's like so bad, so bad. They should be stripped from the uniform and everything for thinking that that was a good idea and instituting it. But yeah, so I wanted to make that comparison So we know that we have child sex trafficking. We know that um, our cities have are worse now, right? Are worse now. But Pence, under the um, I guess the media, well, it was Tucker. Tucker was interviewing him, and he said that the cities and their condition is not a concern for him. He's not concerned about that. That's not his problem. It's kind of like that paralegal that said Richard's not his problem. The paralegal um, soldier. He's not my problem. That's between you and the army. Um, but yet we're supposed to have an army of one. We're supposed to have esprit de corps. We're supposed to have the Medal of Honor ethos. We're supposed to no soldier left behind in our training. And that is what the recruiters tell our young volunteer sons and daughters. And that's not what's happening. That is not the case at all. And so there's so many parallels to the Sound of Freedom that might not involve the child sex trafficking. Of course, that parallels what Richard was complaining about. And we did get a lead. We get lots of leads, okay? And this lead we definitely put up because we have um, proof from the CPS, from Belen, that Richard made CPS complaints. And we also know that Richard made CID complaints. And what this does is implicate General McConville. It implicates Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. It implicates um, Lieutenant General Donna Martin. It implicates Major General Clem Coward. It implicates Brigadier General David Stewart. Um, and there's another general too that I always forget that was there. I think his name was White. Um, and I'm going to write all this down. And General Garrett, of course, it implicates them in colluding and uh, um, the the hiding. Let me get the right words. I have the list here of the right words. Oh, maybe it's on my other list. But it is really important to know that there was colluding in the most savage way against Richard to manipulate his files. And we know his files have been manipulated. We know his files have been sanitized from the field grade Article 15 in the chapter. Um, he was promoted twice. Uh, and that was in a way. Well, we'll see. We'll try to get the answer. We have an inquiry there, but to us, in our opinion, it was a way to sanitize what they had done to Richard um, for an inquiry. For a congressional inquiry, and we know that they have tried to attempted with us to persuade us that Richard committed suicide. There was a time for that, and then that kind of went away because absolutely it's hard to have committed suicide by dismembering yourself, right? Um, and putting yourself in different locations. I mean, did you make a deal with someone or what not? But they definitely wanted to go that route and try to manipulate things, in our opinion. And so, could this happen in 2020? Could this be the case in 2020? And could that happen to us? Absolutely. Here we are, Christian, that they don't like that. Um, they did not like that we were January 6ers, that we were there. Um, They did not like that we did not lockstep to the COVID, that we didn't want anything to do, even though we're very nice and um, but we had a hard time with COVID because we were trying to be nice to people, but still not participate at all in it. And they knew that. And the thing is Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz and Brigadier General Stewart and, according to Jakovitz, Clem Coward, uh, you know, it was all a charade. They knew it was a charade. And Jakovitz told us that they brought in girls during COVID, right? And I'm sure those girls weren't wearing masks. So could they get away with the level of treachery that they committed in our son's case in 2020? 100%. And that's why I kept harping on COVID, and people would ask me, what does this have to do with Richard's case? And I'm like, everything. Because this gave them the opportunity to commit a lot of crimes. And anytime there is an emergency, okay? Anytime that there is an emergency for anything, it could be a war, it could be this, fake thing that they put out to be an emergency, is an opportunity for them to do evil deeds. And you learn that with the Sound of Freedom too. When there is a disaster, when there is an emergency, the pedophiles and the child traffickers call that harvest time. And so they absolutely know that, and they absolutely know that in the military. They take advantage of all of us in an emergency situation instead of defending us, right? Keeping a level head and defending us and defending the Constitution, the land, and the people. They turn on us and they betray us and they take advantage of us. And that's exactly what happened in 2020, because the DOD, okay, the Department of Defense, that means our military, they're the ones that led the charge in betraying us. They're the ones that paid CVS and Walgreens they're the ones. And if you went on post, you absolutely knew that that was the truth. It was so much more tyrannical on post and off post. And they're supposed to be the ones defending the Constitution. They're the ones that are supposed to be defending our Bill of Rights. And yet it was way more tyrannical, way more coercive than when you were off post. We drove up to a post when we lived in Sarasota, and we were like near Tampa, and we were like, what in the world is going on? We got on post and we turned around and left. We left. It was awful. And so we really felt so bad for what Richard was going through there at Fort Bliss, what our soldiers were going through on their post during this whole time. And, so if you're not going along with the COVID, which Richard did not agree with what was going on with the COVID, because I talked to him and I have all the screenshots to prove it. And then to not go along with the child sex trafficking and the rape of a 7-year-old in the Lonnie Hart's bedroom by multiple members of the family, and First Lieutenant Dallas Hart being complained about by his mother. His mother's telling, the CID and the FBI in a report that was notarized, that he was having an incestuous relationship while he was platoon leader. while he was serving in the military, while he was, serving there at Fort Bliss with Richard Halliday. So, this was, a question for us. Is that what Richard was complaining about, and wanting protection for the 7-year-old, for the other children there, because we know that they were running a daycare um, inside their home? And, was he complaining about that? So listen to the complaints. I'm going to read them again. And, um, and you can be the judge. You can be the judge. But I think that the CPS, who we've been waiting, and absolutely, um, if there was no complaint by Richard, they would have come back, but they kept delaying. Oh, we'll get to, we're working on it. We're working on it. Um, and we've spent thousands of dollars trying to get those CPS complaints, FOIA, to us. So we were very happy when we got this lead. And the first allegation that Richard made and reported to the Child Protective Services was instances of child endangerment, physical abuse, and neglect involving specific children. And he expressed deep concern for their safety and well being, urging swift intervention. But you see, CPS is not doing their job, right? And then those in the military on base are not doing their job, right? Because they have a 14-year-old girl living in the barracks being pimped out, prostituted out during the night to these soldiers living in the barracks, and her nights are hell. Her nights are hell, and that's another thing that you learn um, in the Sound of Freedom. They sell these children 5 to 10 times a night. And so, I don't know if this 14-year-old girl, and I do know things about her that I'm not at liberty to say because they're absolutely shocking. You'd be like, what? What? Um, but, you know, I don't know if she had a teddy bear. I don't know if she had a doll, because my daughters at that age had teddy bears, had dolls that they slept with. And this young girl being prostituted out while living in the barracks, and the barracks are co whose bright idea was that? I mean, they really, I think that is an outrage, and needs to be changed immediately. Immediately. Get those women out of the men's barracks. Get the women out of the men's barracks. Um, so we absolutely know that they had no concern. And even after Richard, even after the brutal murder of Richard, even after all that we've done, um, Major General Eisenhower has no concern for children on Fort Bliss living in the barracks being prostituted out. So, and are they filming it? They all have cameras. Are they filming it and creating porn? Because then they have servers, and this is something we've been told by several people. They have their private servers, and they put all this porn on the servers, and it gets airdropped. It gets airdropped. And that happened in Jacksonville, Florida, in the schools, that porn was being airdropped to children attending the school to their phones. And so, uh, you know, if you have the airdrop ability turned on, you might get some nasty stuff. And, uh, you know, I'm not saying turn off your airdrop. I'm saying these predators, these perverts that are doing this, they need to be arrested. They need to be tried in a court of law. There needs to be evidence brought against them. There needs to be, a fair hearing, and they need to be sentenced. Um, we need to send a loud message that we are not tolerating this anymore. We're not tolerating this. And the very people that we entrust and fund to defend us against this kind of nonsense, this kind of crime, are involved, have been compromised. So they're not doing their job. They're not fulfilling their oath. Matter of fact, they're working against it. So that's the first complaint that Richard had. And the second complaint, and we have the dates now of the complaints, which is really handy. So the second is Richard reported allegations of criminal activities, including child exploitation, trafficking, and drug-related offenses. These complaints implicated individuals. He named names believed to be involved in illicit activities that posed a direct threat to the safety and welfare of children. And I have the map of what I believe needs to be investigated over the border to these child orphanages and child shelters, right? So that needs to be, and there was just one arrested just recently right there in Juarez, and I think it was just a few days ago. So if you have that information, please share it. The third allegation, and that's interesting too, the date, is Richard expressed frustration and the lack of intervention and action from CPS regarding his previous complaints, and he emphasized the urgent need for immediate attention to safeguard the affected children and address the alleged criminal activities. So I thought that was an important piece of this lead that sheds a lot of light on what happened. Now, this all needs to be verified, and CPS can do that, CID could do that, General McConville could do that, and yet they remain silent through this all because they're so implicated in trying to falsify and get the narrative out that Richard committed suicide when they had all the evidence of foul play, including his remains and hiding his remains. Now that is an allegation, and we have a lot of information to back up that allegation, including CCTV footage of Nadal Baim, the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado, in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM. Okay, not just any office. This is the G3. This is operations. So we have a lot on record to corroborate the leads that we put out. So I wanted to play a little bit of Tucker because I just feel like it is so important. I'm trying to think of which one should I play because they are they just need to be heard. So, okay, with that, I am going to let this play.
This is running the world. Like, what wouldn't they do? Oh, right, good point.
I'll
Anyway,
give a little commentary.
but I just kind of didn't think too much about it. Like, I'm definitely opposed to vandalism. Anyone who breaks windows is not my friend. I hate that. Have you ever glazed a window? You ever put in a window? It's really hard. I mean it. If you don't think it's hard, try it. You get the size wrong. It doesn't
at
fit,
one point too.
pins in.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. It's like an all-day affair to replace a divided glass door. Anyway, so I don't like that at all. And I said that I don't like it. And within like about an hour, I heard people say, well, that was a racist insurrection. And I was like, really? I didn't know race had anything to do with it. I didn't heard one person say.
Okay, so what he's talking about here is January 6th, which absolutely hurt the search, the case for Richard, because if you were anybody in any position, you, even Senator Cruz, of course, Senator Graham, they were all like, this is an insurrection. And we're like, that was not an insurrection. We were there. That was not an insurrection. And I really love how Tucker puts it, that some people committed vandalism, which, yeah, we would agree with that. That was definitely, but there was not the security there. It was a security breach, just like with Richard's case. And then the narrative afterwards was so twisted. They did not tell the truth. And we, the way Tucker puts it, is that we're the ones that carry the pocket constitution. And lo and behold, let me see if I can reach it. Lo and behold, that struck a, okay, I just messed up my camera a little bit. Okay. Lo and behold, we carry a pocket constitution. And he goes, these are the people that carry a pocket constitution. They want to assert their rights. And they were called domestic terrorists because of that. And it just rang so true to what my Oma had experienced during the Dritte Reich in Germany, that if you didn't lockstep to this a certain narrative, that you were like an enemy of the state. And that's exactly how they treated us, and how this really gave them I guess, a reason to not help us or to be against us. One, we weren't lockstepping to the COVID. Number two, we weren't lockstepping to the January 6th narrative. Number three, we're Christian. And I want to say Tucker comes from an Episcopalian background. So maybe that's why we connect so well in our thinking. So I do want to mention that, to be fair, that we are very like thinkers because of the faith background that we come from. So let's play this a little
word
more.
About race and an insurrection, call me literal, is when armed people try to overthrow the government. That didn't seem to happen either. So I just pretty innocently said, bad, probably not a racist insurrection. What? Shut up! Racist insurrectionist?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, well, obviously people are feeling heated. But like in a week or so, when, the emotional devastation of this second 9/11/Pearl Harbor wears off, people calm down and come to their senses, and you can have like a rational conversation. Trip West, I see you in the front row. Sorry, just saw a friend of mine sitting right there. We can have like a rational conversation about what this actually was and why. And at a certain point, because I really believe in cause and effect, someone will say, well, why were these people so mad? That, none of them had criminal records. They were like grandmoms with diabetes and like a lot of debt. They're the least powerful people in our society, like legit the least powerful.
Moms that have missing soldiers.
And why were they so
dads
mad?
with
Like, why do they
missing
take the
soldiers,
bus from
sister with
Tennessee
missing
to go
soldier,
jump up and down in front of the Capitol? Like something probably had better things to do.
brother-in-laws.
And then maybe if they think that the
missing
election
soldier.
wasn't fair, we will sit them down in a very calm, rational way and be like, I get it. We said that Biden won by 81 million votes. That's 15 million more than Barack Obama. It seems like a lot, considering he didn't campaign and he can't talk. But there was just something about him. It was that magic, and maybe you didn't feel it. It's like pistachio ice cream. It's not a flavor for everybody. But the people who like it really like it, 81 million. So settle down. And by the way, we have the source code in the voting machine software. And we've looked at it. And it's totally on the level. We've double checked. We wouldn't let like an electronic voting machine hide their software from us. Like, never do that. And the drop box is like totally monitored by law enforcement. And every person who voted had to prove he was who he said he was with the government issued ID. Like, settle down. And I would have said, fair enough, because I want to believe in our elections. Who doesn't? And in fact, the people at the Capitol on January 6th are exactly the ones who most want to believe in our elections.
Yes.
They're the ones who carried the pocket constitution.
Yes.
How many CNN anchors like deeply believe in the American political process? They put you in a camp if they could. Shut up. They have no interest in the process at all. But the people who really believed in it were naturally the most shocked and the most upset to believe it wasn't real. But anyway, I thought we would have that conversation at some point. You know, I never supported, and I will never support vandalism, period. But I did think, well, maybe the upside, this, Ashley Babbitt's killing, clearly in retrospect to murder, you know, it'll amount to something. We can have a national conversation about this. And I'm completely for national conversations. But every year they promise us a national conversation. Well, on race, we need a conversation on race. Okay, shut up. Okay. National conversation means no one's allowed to talk except the people who called for the national conversation. And they never stop talking. But anyway, we never had any conversation about that. In fact, anyone who tried was deplatformed, debanked, basically hounded out of public life in America, bankrupted, in a lot of cases put in jail. They're fired. Oh.
He was fired.
Pretty funny. Anyway, excuse me.
Yeah. Okay, so I thought that was so true. And of course, with our case, you know, just trying to get into the crowd to give out prayer candles. And look, when I listen to a video, I normally speed it up so I can get through it quicker. Just because my time is so limited. So if he seems like he's hyper, it's because I have it on 1.2 speed. Sometimes I listen to it even quicker. So, yeah, that was the first one. Let's get this.
Doing that on purpose. And you should probably look around and ask yourself, what are the topics that no one's even pushing back on? What are the topics that their response is so ferocious that people are like, I don't want to deal with it? One of them is the war in Ukraine. Another's COVID. And, of course, the third is January 6th. And you have to ask, why is that? Well, it's not by accident, trust me. There is a reason. So, what'd you say? I don't know what, you know what, the thing about that story is just a mystery to me. No one was more shocked than I was. Are you serious? In the Biden White House, somebody left an 8-ball of cocaine in a public. I was like, I said to my wife, it's just not in character, you know? I just don't believe it. It's clearly a setup. I went right back to Marion Barry and I was like, somebody set you up. I'm serious. It was, you know what I mean? It was like, it was so, I'll stop with it. That was my favorite story of all time. Because it just explains all the behavior. It really does. I mean, I worked in the media business for my whole life, so I know what the behavior looks like. But it's like crazed and grandiose. I've got a plan. You're not going to believe it. It's unbelievable. It's going to totally work. What we're going to do is we're going to totally rearrange everything, okay? We've been doing things a certain way for a long time, okay? And it's worked, but I've got a better plan. And that's their entire approach.
Is that General McConnell? Is that General Barrett?
So if I can just give you one piece of advice. After 27 years in the television business, don't trust a man with numb gums.
Major General Eisenhower, you know? Crazed like, oh, you mean there's foul play in Richard's case? Oh, no, I got a better idea. We can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do the justice thing. We can't do our duty thing. We can't do honor and integrity thing. No, we've got to do these sex cults. We got to protect our sex cults. We got to protect our pedophiles, our child sex trafficking. Yeah. So, yeah, we got to. You mean defend our Constitution, defend what's right? No, no, that's a boring plan. Absolutely. And this one is long, so I'll probably go.
Smoke machines are so affirming. Wow, this is. It's. Thank you for having me.
This was such a great speech.
It's funny. I was just standing. First of all, may I say, go Megyn Kelly. I mean, that was awesome. Thank you. It's pretty. I don't. Thank. Are a group that I despise on principle because they tend to be soulless and have kind of barren and sad personal lives, and so they spend their days trying to win affirmation from people they've never met. It's pathetic. But in real life, no, it's true. They all have alcoholic or abusive fathers to whom they're trying to prove something. But in practice, in person, I mean, they're all super charming. I mean, there's not a politician in the world who's not charming. That's why they went into this business. It was either that or selling cars, and this was more lucrative, so they went into it. So I like almost all of them when I meet them, and you can't not. They can talk about anything. They've mastered the sort of shallow small talk over coffee, which I definitely appreciate. That's an acquired skill, and they've worked hard at it. But I have to say, after spending all day with them, I learned a couple of things which I think may be relevant to you and to the country. And a couple of things, and I don't want to attack anyone on personal grounds or by name. It's tempting. I will say it's tempting. Whoever said do it, you're the devil on my shoulder. Do it! I've spent my whole life than just like savaging Mike Pence. I think. Which I'm not going to do, because that would be wrong, and it would be wrong because it's too easy. And the easy things are not rewarding, are they? You don't feel good when you beat your 5-year-old in soccer or ping pong. Like what? But I did learn a couple of things. It was super, super interesting. The first thing, I guess I already knew it, and you know it already, that's why you're here, which is the spread between the things that Republicans in Washington, the people you vote for and put there, care about, like actually care about, pretend to care about a lot of things, but the things that really touch them off, that matter to them, very different from the things that matter to the people who vote for them. And you kind of thought that would change, because we did have an event several years ago where Republicans elected a guy basically on the promise to blow up the Republican Party, and you thought, that would get their attention. If your wife runs off with the pool boy, it's like time to reassess your skills as a husband. Like, you got to pause just for a moment and be like, yeah, it's bad, but maybe I contributed to her behavior. Most self-aware people, and I'm being serious, ask themselves that question. Like, how was I responsible for this bad thing that happened? But there's been literally none of that. It's been all blaming the pool boy in Washington. So I don't see that changing at all. Maybe it'll take a next election cycle to do that. But the second, more interesting thing I learned is that almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody in elected office in the Republican Party has internalized the other side's rules for debate. And if you think about that, there's no really more self-defeating way to go into politics or life than to accept the terms that your enemies offer before the conversation's even begun. Because there's really no winning.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to expand on that because this is exactly what has happened in Richard's case that has been exposed, is that they have thrown away the Medal of Honor ethos, conversation, the training of it, the Army of One, that training of it, the have your battle buddy 6, that training of it, and we saw that in Jay Pollin's comments. That was very clear. We saw that with the paralegal. That was very clear. We saw that with Captain David Park. That was very clear. And, those are a little, and we saw that with First Sergeant Ruggiero, right? And many, many others. I mean, every one of them, every last one of them. Okay. And I'm trying to think of one, right? But But what is really devastating is these seasoned leaders that have spent their life in the military that know better, such as General McConville or General Mealy or General Garrett, that know better, and they are totally compromised. You see that because they've accepted the enemy's terms already uh, before they're even defeated. Okay, we still have a military, we still have a country, and yet they have accepted the terms of the enemy. And that's why it seems like this Trojan horse um, in our military, that it's been infiltrated. But what's happened, and I thought that this was a really great point that Tucker made, and there's so many great points, is the acceptance of the enemy's terms before before there's even a battle, right? Before there is. Um, so, uh, and those terms have created these allegations of collusion um, between, I will say, because I have a lead, I have, I have a lead of all this information, y'all. And part of that is what I released yesterday about the Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe and General McConville colluding together to tamper with Richard's file to try to make him look like he died of a suicide when in fact it was foul play and murder and dismemberment, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. I mean, they did it. They tried to do it, which is a crime, and that's why we were never notified of Richard being missing because they were too busy trying to collude, and they knew it was a big mess, and tried to just sweep this whole case under the rug. But then they colluded um, in trying to deal with his death. And so with that, and I know that they did that because I have it on record. I have it on record from Soto, from the PI, from Bernabe, all around the same time frame, trying to convince us, trying to groom us that Richard committed suicide, and we absolutely know that that there's no evidence of that. Um, and at the same time, they withheld the information about Richard being a whistleblower, about Richard going to the Child Protective Services, what the Child Protective Services triggered with the IG, that they could say all of that, right? And they played, I guess, juggling the ball to prevent us from getting the information. And that Richard went to the CID to make complaints. And so this is a very, very serious because they need to be, if this is true, they need to be arrested, they need to be tried. And this kind of level of crime, I'm so glad it's in Texas and they have the death penalty. I really want the death penalty to be on the table when we get accountability for all of this. Because we're talking about our volunteer sons and daughters. We're talking about our national security. We're talking about treason and murder and cover up and tampering with evidence, being Richard's remains, and the bullying and manipulation of the family, and so many other. I wish I was a lawyer because I just list them off on the top of my head. By the end of this, I'll probably be able to get a law degree because of all the law that we have to study because um, of having to do this. Well, we're not alone. We have an alliance now, and we have an alliance of intel and the security community that's within Fort Bliss. Um, so that's really positive. So, we just need the vast public to understand what is happening, what happened in Richard's case, and that, I would not be on live stream saying all of this if we didn't have 1,085, 86 days of information, um, evidence, timelines. The timelines are so interesting, y'all. It's so interesting. And I'm going to put together a brief just on Richard's timelines, and who's all involved in them, starting pretty much in January of 2020. Um, I think that is, even though it started a little before that, but I think that's when the brief will start. So it's a lot of hard work to get this to you so that you can understand Richard's case and that's another thing in common with the sound of freedom, is that it's there, but when you see the extent, when you see what's going on, um, in front of you, in picture, in words, it's still shocking. And the movie's done very well because they didn't insult you with vile and vulgar scenes, anything like that. So that it is a high caliber film, and yeah, you can't be happy when you leave it. It's not for entertainment. It's definitely for information, for the sake of our country and the health of our country. And this is the same thing that Team Find Richard Halliday is trying to do by creating a book, by creating these briefs, by putting together the timelines, by putting together the information of the leads, and so that you will understand that the CID in Quantico, that Taurus absolutely, Representative Torres put together and funds could absolutely cut off funding off of them, and should because they're not doing their job. And in my estimation, because they should be in communication with us. So people need to know this, and we're transparent about it, even though sometimes it doesn't do us any good to be transparent, because of the censorship, because of the shadow banning and things like this, and also the retaliation, the vile, vulgar, the whatever. That's all they have, is the vile, vulgar. That's all they have. And it just, whatever, whatever, go to hell, because I'm not going to stand next to, uh, in my country, and tolerate the vile, vulgar. Okay, and let it destroy the future for our children. Let it destroy our military, our volunteer sons and daughters. Let it destroy our cities, because look, you got the likes of Veronica Escobar standing shoulder to shoulder with the pedophiles, with the she absolutely knows that this is foul play, and if you only knew the part she played in this, and that'll be in the book, you will be you'd be like, oh my God, oh my God. So remember 2020 and 2024, when she's like, okay, I agree with Mrs. Halliday. We should have the FBI, a third party like the FBI, and the FBI is hiding the remains of our son. I mean, the FBI is hiding the remains of our son. And she doesn't know that. She doesn't. Come on. She was a judge. So, and the part that she played after that, um, it is it needs to be stood against. And so that's another thing that we have in common with the Sound of Freedom is the call to stand against the child sex trafficking, along with um, the pornography, along, and be aware of how they do it and what's going on, and also the psyop of it. Because even going to the movie, that's the hard part that I have about going to the movie, is the psyop of it. The the more this stuff is out there and gets attention, the more that it becomes part of our culture, and I don't like that. I want some beautiful, great, wonderful things um, to be making and developing our culture, and not thoughts on this kind of crime. But at the same time, you can't put your head in the sand. You have to call it out. So it is a fine line that you have to walk. And so this, with our son's case, um, that started out as, oh, we want to work with the military, we want to work with the CID, we want to work with all these people that want to help us. We want to work with these 15 plus agencies to help us find our son, to give us the truth, right? Um, and then as we have gone by, we and found out how betrayed we have been by General McConville, by General Milley, um, and the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of Defense, um, but by Major General Clem Coward, by so many of the soldiers that were involved in this, um, under coercion, under the threat of retaliation, of course. So, yeah, we definitely have to stand and call this out. And at the same time, I want to make sure everyone knows that behind the scenes, um, we still focus on what is good and noble and true and just, to um, remind us our future, what our future should be like, and what we should be focusing on. So it is a fine balance, and I hope that everyone understands that this is not just what we eat and breathe, um, because we'd never be able to go this long and hold this out unless we recharged with what is good and right and true and noble and honorable, to give us the strength to move forward and to know why we want accountability, and to keep us calm, to not make us vengeful and rash. Um, and many, many times in this, we were set up to act rash, and we didn't. We didn't. Um, so I'm very proud of ourselves for that, for staying as calm as we have. Um, Not always calm, but as calm as we have in this um, development, a daily development of our son's case. So, because when I found out that Anthony Swafford was a military police, and I had those screenshots that he was hearing the smear campaign from the guard mount, from the change of shift senior leader, and now I think that that was Marlon Soto or Tavita Nusa. I think they can They can verify that. Um, but they were absolutely colluding together to form a narrative to smear Richard, um, and to try to suicide him like they've done others in the past. And, and that's a lie. That would be a lie. And to cover up the foul play and the truth about what happened to him in the vicious murder, because they wanted to cover for sex cults and, um, I believe, weapon smuggling, equipment smuggling, ammunition smuggling. There's just the CID complaints that are going to come out. So you have the CPS complaints, and then you have the CID complaints. They're going to shine a light. I'm just checking them to make sure that we have evidence of our own to corroborate um, these complaints. And I think that they're going to shed a light on uh, on the military, um, for all the people that entrust the military to be honorable, to have integrity, and to take the tools that we give them and use them wisely instead of turning them into weapons against us, against our own soldiers, which happened in Richard's case. And then they try to scrub and sanitize the files of their criminal deeds. And and they can't, because we've been gathering it, and everyone, we've been so transparent, so many people have this stuff. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming on, and thank you, Anicia, and I hope everyone has a great Saturday night, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Thank you. God bless. Bye bye.